Welcome to the What's Your Revolution show, a show for men and the people who love them, where we discuss how men can find and embrace the revolution within themselves, where people can find and embrace the revolution within themselves. I am your host, Dr. Charles Corprew. As we say all the time, what's good, revolutionaries? I hope that you are well and that you are finding your communities and that you are doing your thing and you are finding the best, most revolutionary version of yourself. And that's what we do. As I say here all the time, to fulfill your revolution, you must revolt and evolve. You must know your choice points. You must find your midwives. You should know that your revolution is not just for you, and you should always be becoming the next revolutionary version of yourself. And for 6 years, that's what we've been doing. We have been trying to figure out what this show is, what it's going to look like now and in the future. But as we celebrate 6 years of this show, we're going to go back.
Way back.
We're going to go way back to the beginning. And you've heard me talk about this person so many times on this show. I call her my forever producer. It is the incomparable, the lovely, the esteemed, the most beautiful, the most intellectual, the catalyst, the revolution behind the revolution. It
Okay.
is the Rachel Graham coming to the show. And I just want people to know, as you know, I've told this story, but I'm gonna say it once again. This show started in a coffee shop, in a Starbucks coffee shop, as we were building out my first company, the first iteration of What's a Revolution. And I looked over as we were in that Starbucks on Magazine Street in our beloved New Orleans, and I said, Rachel, I want a radio show. And she was like, what? I was like, I want a radio show. And she was like, okay, we're gonna make that happen. And you all
Mhm.
know we've talked about how the show came to fruition, but it was Rachel making the call to our good friend and the lovely and most talented and most beautiful Susan Henry. And all of a sudden, on January 17th, 2017, the What's Your Revolution show was born. And this woman was the first producer, and she got on my everlasting nerves making this show.
Ditto.
Making this show in the beginning what it
Yeah.
was. And if it wasn't for Rachel Graham and all of her hard work and love and dedication to this show, we would not be where we are now. And so I want to publicly say thank you. Thank you to Rachel Graham for believing in me and believing in the concept of the show. I even remember how we came up with the tagline that has stayed the tagline for the last 6 years: a show for men and the people. That is Rachel Graham. That is Rachel Graham, a show for men and the people who love them. uh, and so welcome to the show again, because we used to do this every now and again. It was the Chucky and Rachel episodes of the
Yes.
show, when we
Yes.
used to get down and talk about what was going on with
Yeah.
the revolution, what was going on with New Orleans, what was on our minds. And so we are going to revisit that.
Wow.
Just enjoy this, reminisce about 6 years,
Mhm.
and just reminisce about this friendship and the joy that we have and the gratitude that I have for her. But Rachel, you know what I'm about to ask you.
I'm prepared too.
Oh, you prepared? Here we go. Rachel Graham, my forever producer. What's your revolution?
So I was prepared because the first time you asked me this, I got mad at you. I hate when you ask me this question because it makes me think and it puts me in a place where I really have to challenge myself. You know this, Charles. I kind of just go through life just doing, and I
Mm,
never stop to think about um, impact, purpose, or whatever. It's like I'll be sitting around and I'll like see two people in one plate like together. I'm like, oh, you guys can do something together. But I prepared today, and it just so happened, like, in my morning devotional time, AKA also known as scrolling through Instagram or Facebook. Um,
that's what we're calling it now. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to call that devotional now.
that's my morning
I'm
devotional.
gonna use that. Call it devotional.
And so it was interesting because someone posted this and I put it together with a thought that was kind of like my contemplative thought for the week because I really need to hold to this. And I came up with this is my revolution. So, my revolution is to understand that the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away.
Mm,
The revolution is the contemplative thought of not setting yourself on fire to keep others warm to get to those things.
Mm.
Um, I'm by no means succeeding in my revolution just yet. It is an evolution and a process. Um, but that is, if I could pull it together, it talks about kind of what my journey has been, how I
Yeah.
approach the work, but also things that I need to learn how to do better in that work. And
Yeah.
so that has always been kind of how I've approached, my crazy career. It has been a very interesting journey. But always at the center of it, it has never been about me. And I've actually had to like kind of reinforce that to folks. And they've come back at me like, but it needs to be about you.
Yeah.
And that's where that tail end comes in. Like, I want to make sure if I see two folks that need each other, I need to put them together so that they
Yeah.
can get to what they are trying to accomplish. But I really need to be better. And I hate to use the cliche self care, but I think the better way to talk about it is this concept of, I feel like sometimes I set myself on fire every
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
and everybody else is warm and I'm walking around smelling like smoke. So yeah, that's my revolution.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Here comes Rachel. She's on fire. She's
Literally.
on fire.
Literally. But
That's
it's crazy because sometimes, let me tell you how it works out. You will be setting yourself on fire to do these things. And people are like, oh, look at that look at them pretty blazes. And oh, look at the pretty, oh, it glows so beautifully. Not realizing there's a person in the center of all this beauty that you see who is literally consuming themselves
yeah.
in this work.
Yeah.
And I'm not really good at it. I've been admonished several times. In the course of the last 3 days about, taking care of myself and not, going hard in the paint. I'm not as young as I used to be.
Mm. 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 Big sis.
No, no, no. Got me. I was like,
yeah, I know. I know I fooled you.
I was like, but no.
I know.
But yeah,
I know.
just you gotta take care of yourself. Like I said, I went to the doctor today, and literally the same thing I was, kind of in conversation with myself about before I got to the doctor. She was like parroting all of that back to me without prompt, and I'm like, okay, I get it. So yeah, that's my
Yeah,
revolution.
so what I hear in this is the revolution is not to set yourself on fire.
Absolutely,
Right,
it's
right.
to not set myself on fire, but to still be about the work of recognizing the gifts that I have
Yes.
and not
Yes.
holding them to myself. If I
Mm.
see that my community or that my people or spaces and places that I'm privileged enough to be in, if I see that what I have can benefit or take folks to the next level, then hey, take it. I just need to figure out how to say, whoa, Nelly, that's enough taking.
Whoa. Whoa.
Hold up, trigger. But yeah.
Hold up. Hold up. So this is what I want to ask Rachel
Okay.
as we think about that, because if anybody knows Rachel Graham, you know that she's a super connector, right? If you think about like literally AT&T, T-Mobile, right? That's what Rachel is.
Yeah.
I told you the story, Revolutionaries, of how she put me on.
All the time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, personally and professionally. But
That's a story for another
I
show.
know, right? Hey, Susan. Hey,
You put your
Susan.
business in these
Hey,
streets.
that's my show. That's my
I know,
show.
your show, you can do what
That's
you want
my
to do.
show. You know what I'm saying? Halloween was fun. But
I
yo,
forgot about that. Wow.
yeah. So, the thing about that is that I love the analogy is walking around and you're on fire. And
Mhm.
we think about this because if I think about a fire, Rachel, I'm thinking about how fires keep us warm, how fires illuminate us in times of darkness, how fires are a guiding light where, oh, there's the fire over there. But what happens is, I think that's what you're saying, is that if a fire gets too hot, right? If a fire gets too hot, it becomes destructive. We have to be able to control our light. We have to be able to control our fire. And sometimes, even and sometimes, we've got to turn the fire down.
Or just
right?
put that, just put it out. I
Yeah,
mean,
right, right. Exactly. To
yeah,
or put it out for a little while,
absolutely.
and regather the kindling. Here we go. You know, what I'm saying, right?
Oh, you can go back to your Boy Scout days.
Exactly. Regather the kindling.
Yeah,
And see, sometimes that's what happens. The fire dies down, and then we've got to put some fresh wood on it.
absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's the
Absolutely.
thing I think that we have to think about. If you remember, Dr. David Wallace was on the show last year, and he talked about it's not self care; it's soul care,
Mm,
and it's moving us to this space of I have to protect my soul if I'm going to be if we're going to do
yeah,
the work that we're doing,
yeah,
right, and the work that Rachel Graham does out in the world, and she's in Baltimore. I'll let her
yeah,
introduce all the gravitas that she is in the world. But if we're going to give our light to folks and out in the world, we got to make sure that we are protecting that light, that we can
absolutely.
cover it sometimes. And actually, you know what? I need to extinguish this and go get some fresh wood, right? Get some
Absolutely.
fresh kindling so I can then I can beam even stronger and brighter.
Right. Or you run into things where a small fire gets started and it gets out of control and it burns down half of California. I
Uh,
mean, like, but I'm serious.
Boom. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I when I've overextended myself and I'm still trying to, make it happen for everybody else, and I'm not eating. I sit in my chair for 15 hours at a time. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but not by much.
Yeah.
But that becomes destructive, not
Mhm.
just to yourself, but as you start to eat away at who you are as a person, then you start. I know some people have caught the fire, not the
Right.
smoke, the fire,
Yeah, yeah.
from me being just
Mhm.
exhausted. And I don't
Right.
show up as my best self.
Right.
I'm not those things it's kind of like catch 22 or idiosyncratic, whatever the big, you're the doctor between the two of us, whatever that big word is, where it's like I am burning myself up to be there for other people, and yet I am consuming myself and burning them back. Like
Right.
it's just a destructive cycle. So you do have to recognize that um, it'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there is time where I love that soul care idea,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Go back
like
and
you
listen to the
know,
show, everybody. So soul care,
yeah,
moving from self care to understand the
right,
caring of our souls. Because
absolutely,
as you're saying, is that if we don't care for our souls, we can't. We're not showing up in
mm-mm.
our most revolutionary self.
Absolutely not, absolutely not. And then it's just chaos and, like I said, destruction.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't need chaos and destructive Rachel out in the
Mm-mm.
world. I've seen it.
He's seen it.
Look, look. I've, I have seen it, which leads me back. Let's take it back.
Mhm.
Like I said, everybody, this show is founded based on the ideas that Rachel had 6 years ago about what this show could be. Talk to me, Rachel, what it was like for you as a black woman
Mhm.
to produce a show that was geared towards black men,
Mhm.
right? Towards black men by a black man who is headstrong, and then we talk
Way
about
headstrong.
right, we talk about my Taurusness, my Taurian behaviors,
Victorian behaviors. Yep.
right? Talk about what it was like for you to then be in the room and produce a show that was uplifting black men, but you're a black woman. What was that like for you?
Easy.
Mm,
Um, and I'm not saying as it wasn't a challenge, because you were challenging, and then there were points where we really didn't agree on some of the people you wanted to have on the show.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Love that
but
happens.
I will say this. Um, if my mother was here, she would second it. I have always loved me some black men. Like always.
Like always. Just
Like always. I can't explain it. It's interesting. I have a wonderful ish relationship with my father now, but like for the first half of my life, I didn't grow up with my dad. But I had my grandfather. I had one of the pastors at our church, Reverend Lee, who was always very close to our family. Um, I loved black men. I thought they were the coolest thing on the planet. And that's just something that stuck with me. I, there's a show that we did when 444 came
Yeah, I
out.
was just thinking about that show. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I probably caught flack, but nobody was brave enough to say it to my face. But I took a rather controversial stance because I got what Jay-Z was going through. And I think
Mm,
one of the things that we talked about all the time, and why the show I say was easy to do, is that I think in some cases it's been an overcorrection where Black women's voices have been suppressed for so long
yeah.
that some of the stances that we have a tendency to take are as it's an overcorrection. That's the best way to put it. That, you know, we have lost the ability to see and hear the side of Black men. And there
Mm,
is this requirement of them to be, in some cases, better than we are without recognition of what it is they're really going through.
yeah.
And so, um, for that's why I say for me it was easy because these were conversations that I felt were important. These were things that I felt Black men wanted to have conversations about. Even if they didn't, want to come forth and, openly say, hey, I want to talk about the fact that I need to go see a therapist,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
hey, I want to talk about the fact that I haven't cried in 15 years,
Hmm.
or I want to talk about, yoga. I want to like
Yeah.
we talked about
Meditation.
we
Right.
talked about meditation. We talked about what it was like the first show
Oh, with Oliver.
with the now again this council member Oliver Thomas and his redemptive story
Yes. Yes.
and
Tell
the
that
work he
story.
had been doing in community. And so for me, that is kind of an example of one of those stories. People dogged him out for, making a poor decision. Um, but he will tell you to this day, I did my time like a man. I came out, I changed my life, and I'm working for my people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so things like that, like, we told those stories. And so, like I said, the summary is yes, easy,
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel, because,
Mm-hmm.
in thinking back to show number one,
Mm-hmm.
and being in that little small space. I look, and I think there's a picture. I think maybe there's a picture somewhere, right? Maybe
Somebody has
there's,
it. I think
yeah,
I may have it. If
yeah,
I go far enough back, I have it.
there's a picture of me interviewing Oliver, nervous, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
the first show. I got all of these questions written out, all of the diatribe, and
Mm-hmm.
Oliver is just this smooth,
Yes.
smooth, caring, inviting, endearing. Even though I'm the interviewer there, he is bringing me into a space that he
Mm-hmm.
is fully comfortable with because that's
Absolutely.
who Oliver Thomas is.
Right.
And I just think about that story as you said, because Oliver set the tone for what was going to happen for 6 years,
Yep.
for what we thought about. Is that how do we bring Black men on this show and women
Mm-hmm.
who are going to talk about themselves in the most vulnerable way possible?
Right.
And that's the thing, like you said, we often don't get to see this vulnerability. One of the shows at the recording of this show, um, the show that just dropped was Roy Scott, who's the CEO of Healthy Hip Hop.
I saw that.
Right, and this brother was a gangster rapper, he hardcore hip hop rapper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one day, as he's driving down the road, smoking a Black and Mild, listening to his own lyrics, his son is spitting them back to him.
Sounds different, don't it?
Right, right, it does, and that's the thing. His son, and all of a sudden, he's like, "Wait, wait." And I love that we have been able to pull out, Rachel, this tenet, this thing. As you fulfill your revolution, you have to revolt and
Yeah.
evolve. Excuse
Mm-hmm.
me. And I think about this going back to Oliver Thomas, right? For him to sit in this seat as a councilman, to be humble, humble in nature, to say I have been a flawed man. I am still a flawed man.
Right.
But I can come back and tell a story of redemption and
Mm-hmm.
come back and lead my people. That's
Right.
show number one, people. Right? To think about that Oliver Thomas set the tone of what this show. And if we have to bring Rachel's influence, because I remember us sitting like, who is going to be the first person on the show.
Yeah,
And that's the wonderful thing about the intellect and the, as you said, Rachel said, I need to bring two people together.
absolutely.
And what happened was that you were able to bring Oliver and myself together to start this revolution, and he set it off.
And that wasn't even the best show. Like that's the thing that was crazy because it was a dope show.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, like, I remember we did the conversation with Councilmember Jim Singleton and
Oh
Wesley
yeah.
Bias.
Yes.
We did the conversation, and this, I don't know how we pulled this off. After Sterling K. Brown
Oh
won
yeah.
the Emmy, we
Yeah.
had Harry Elam,
Yeah.
which in and of itself was a coup. Um,
Mm.
we've had Hakeem Bellamy, who I'm still trying to figure out how we're related.
And if
Like
anybody don't know, yeah,
we
Hakeem
had,
Bellamy was the first poet, New Mexico's
yeah,
first poet laureate.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, good friend of mine. Yeah, exactly. Keep going. I'm sorry.
We've had there's Brother Larry.
Larry's been on the show twice now.
I know.
Look, have you seen Larry? Have you
I've
seen Larry?
seen Larry.
Have
Yeah,
you seen look,
I've
look,
seen
have you seen Larry?
Ira CEO. Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah.
But to that point, you know, it's crazy. I think what's crazy for me is that it has been 6 years. We never thought about 6 years.
No.
We were like, okay, what's next week's show going to be?
Yes.
While we're at it, we gotta pay respect to the man that kept it all together.
My man Jazz.
My man Jazz on the wheels of steels.
My man Jazz on the wheels of steel. There were no wheels and there were no steels.
There were no wheels, there were no steels.
It was just a board.
But I bring him up because jazz is quintessential New Orleans.
Mm.
And what would end up happening sometimes is that we'd be talking some bull stuff
Ish.
and jazz would jump in and like check us or bring that New Orleans black man-ness to our conversations. And it was an amazing time. It was an amazing time. And so, yeah, like literally we would just be getting to like, okay, who's this week? And it's funny. So I'm smiling and nodding as you are extolling all these laudatory remarks on me. None of this is me saying, yeah, you're right. But it's just a remembrance of, wow, I did do that. But the thing you also have to tell people is I also produced and host my own show.
That's right. That's right. Which was right after the show. That's right.
And sometimes, you know, you would come on the show with me, which was wonderful because sometimes it would be like nobody would ever call. So I needed somebody else besides Jazz to talk to. I think that was the challenging part because I had to switch from this very kind of, I don't know the proper word for it, but kind of a lifestyle show to a drive time evening news talk show with some real heavy stuff and some very strange listeners.
Revolutionaries, I want you to understand, Rachel and I started out on WBOK 12:30
a.m.
12:30 a.m.
Yes.
An AM station, right? It was a talk show. We had, and we did the show, I want to say we did the show,
I feel like
Rachel was there from 17 to 18, and then she left me.
Actually, I was there from 16 to 18. I started at I started WBOK 2 months after I lost my mother. And then I think you came on in 17.
I came on in 17, and then 18. I remember you saying, "Hey, yeah, yo, I'm rolling out." I'm like, what?
And it's crazy because nobody believed me.
Yeah.
Nobody believed me. And so you have this term, and you gave me props for this in one of our last shows about blowing up your life.
Yes. Oh, I remember that.
And so, it was a decision. Like I said, I lost my mother in June of 2016. 2016 was probably the worst year of my life. We all know for several reasons.
Yeah.
It was one of the worst years of my life. And the best way to describe it is I felt completely untethered.
Yeah.
Because my mom was my rock and my person. And then I lost my mom and other things. And so it was hard because I was like, my daughter went to college that year.
Right.
And so all of my people, I was like out here kind of floating. And as I explained to people, I love New Orleans. I will forever love New Orleans. I haven't been back recently, just for finance reasons and time and stuff, but I love New Orleans. Leaving New Orleans was probably the hardest decision of my life.
Yes, yes,
But
yeah,
I'm allergic to being broke.
man. Let me tell you.
I mean, that was what it is. You know,
Yeah,
it's hard. Like
yeah,
it was, all that other stuff is probably manageable if I wasn't living on $1,200 a month. Seriously.
right.
Um, and so that was really a hard decision. That was revolutionary. But yeah, I mean, is you know, just to reflect on those times. And I'll tell you, the things I did look forward to were our shows. I started
Yeah,
to hate my show after a minute because it was really hard. And but our shows, like we would like have these really cool conversations and these really cool guests, and I got to, you know, I could produce and think and not necessarily have to be in the host seat, which was that was really really hard.
yeah, yeah. Rachel, I want to go back because you
Sure,
it's something interesting that you said. I want to bring jazz back into this conversation
sure,
because in essence, this is still a New Orleans show.
it absolutely is.
It is still a New Orleans. I talk about New Orleans at length on the show. I think that the New Orleans Visitors Bureau needs to give me some sponsorship dollars because, like,
Good luck with
I'm
that.
always telling folks to go to New Orleans. I mean, I
Mhm,
talk about our beloved New Orleans all the time.
mhm.
But one of the things you said is that intrigues me is that black masculinity in New Orleans, right? And like I want to drop down on that because Jazz, if you ever listen to this show, when you know I have to say that I love you, my dear brother, and that I am grateful for you because Jazz could be cantankerous. Jazz could be like F this New Orleans thing, FWBOK, F everything,
At least once a week.
at least once a week. But it was something about this show that Jazz said, I don't care about nobody else.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna make sure that you get what you need for this.
Because
Even
Jazz stayed after I left.
Jazz stayed after you left. And remember, I used to record out of Jazz's studio.
I know.
How we became a podcast was like the WPOK broke apart. And Jazz was like, what do you want to do?
sold. They sold to some other people
Right.
and moved out to other
Right. Oh,
cities.
now they got no, now they got these nice robust studios and everything. But Jazz was Jazz is and was so New Orleans.
Absolutely.
And just just illuminate Jazz to the revolutionaries. Like your impression of Jazz, what Jazz brought to this show, and what Jazz was indicative of New Orleans black masculinity.
Right. It's interesting. I was in a conversation with someone recently, and we were talking about the similarities between Baltimoreans and New Orleanians.
Mm,
And what I explained is they are extremely authentic. If they love you, they love you. If they don't, you need to go find somewhere else to be. You need to go kick rocks. And they will tell you that in no uncertain terms. Their BS detector in both cities is way keyed in. Like they detect BS very well. But when it comes to the men of both cities, I think the everyday challenge of dealing with the circumstances that both cities present to Black men has caused them to have to be hyper
yeah.
masculine.
Yeah. There you go.
Um,
Look at you. Look at you, Rachel.
I
Bring
learned a
there,
little bit.
there you
Um,
go.
um, you know, you got to be strong. You got to show up. And, I'm not going to try to be a, junior historian, but if you look at the history of Black men in both cities, now the history of New Orleans goes way further back,
Right.
but the intentional things that were done to Black men in both cities, you understand why. Black men were the back of industry, pretty
Back of
much.
industry.
They were the
Yes.
back of industry. Um, all the way up and through to like right now, if you really want to be honest about it. And so, you know, they're not quite sure who they can trust or who they
Yeah.
can't trust. When they
Right.
do trust you, they trust you to a point. Um, they love you to a point. um, but to physically describe Jazz, he's kind of this ragtag dude with long locks. I think he still has locks.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a couple of years, but yeah,
I think he's
that
still.
was his thing. Yeah, that was his thing, and he was a connoisseur.
He was a
He
connoisseur.
was a connoisseur. We won't say a connoisseur of what, but he was a connoisseur.
He was a connoisseur. He lived a natural life.
Yeah, the natural way.
And
Yeah, man.
so, but he was a super talented dude. Like, it wasn't just that he was a sound engineer, but he was a musician.
Yeah,
Shout out to Corey Henry, who the theme song for my show was something that Jazz produced.
yeah. Hmm.
And so Jazz had, done all this, stuff. And so, yeah, so there was always, how do I say this? It always felt like you could only get but so close to Jazz, because there is kind of a bit of misgiving amongst men in New Orleans around reflecting that vulnerability, because reflecting that vulnerability could get you killed.
Right, right,
It is literally a life or death thing there.
right.
Um,
That's why I
but
think it's important.
yeah,
That's why I think it's important to note this conversation with him.
absolutely.
Revolutionaries I'm bringing back the significant folks that made this show early on,
Hmm.
and Jazz being the New Orleanian in the room,
Hmm.
and I think that he took to the show because he got to hear realness. He got to
Hmm.
right, and we were at the time strictly bringing New Orleanians into the show.
No, that's not true. Because remember, like that second year, that's when we started phoning people in.
That's right. That's
So
right.
like
That's
we
right.
had Francois, Willie Francois,
Right.
who was in, and as a matter of fact, he was on the show however many years ago, probably 5 years ago, not five. I can't remember when, but he was there on this day talking about MLK
That's
and
right. That's right.
and
We
his
brought him
speech.
in. That's exactly right.
Right. And so
That's
like toward the like that last year, toward the end, like we were figuring out ways to like call people in. Like we had
that's
to
right. That's
like
right.
rig the
I
microphones.
know that man. Look. Go to my Facebook page, right? And you're gonna have to scroll to actually go to the What's Your Revolution Facebook page because
Mhm.
Rachel Graham always made sure that we were posting on both my
Yeah.
Facebook page and the
Yes.
What's Your Revolution Facebook page. And if you go back and you go through, you will see us jerry rigging, right?
Yeah.
My phone and some
Put the
headphones
headphones
with
onto the
on
speaker.
the speaker, right? So you could hear the conversation of me and my guest. That's what we were doing in
Right.
2017
Right.
and 2018.
But even the
And
people that we brought on that weren't New Orleanian, we made sure that they were real.
that's right. And I think Jazz heard that. And
Hmm.
Jazz, we were just real with Jazz. And I think that he loved
Hmm.
the show and gave us because you know what? Jazz was like, I ain't coming in, but I'm only coming in for your show.
Yep.
I'm only so shout out to you, my brother, and I hope that
Absolutely.
you are doing well.
Absolutely.
Rachel, I want to talk more about you
Mhm.
in this moment because revolting and involving and making choices are revolutionary.
Right.
And I know many of my listeners are thinking about, okay, you threw it in there early, like you left me, and it was yeah. I say that with some jovialness to it, some humor, but
He was mad. He was mad. You were mad. You
big
were
man,
mad when I
big man.
told
I was like, what are you doing?
you.
Like,
Right.
where are you
Right. Right.
going? Right.
Right. Right.
But I had to understand that we revolt and to be revolutionary in our lives, and revolution is radical change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We didn't call this show "What's your transformation." We said "What's your revolution."
What's your migration?
What's your next day? No,
Right.
We
Right.
said
Right.
right. It's what's your revolution, and I define that as radical reconstruction of
Right.
your life.
Right.
That you are revolting and evolving, like you are revolting from this person that you are right now, and radically transforming into something that is not reminiscent of something that you've ever been.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and so you made a decision to leave New Orleans,
Right.
a city that is beloved to us.
Mm-hmm.
What has it been like for you 5 years later to now move to Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
ascend in positions,
Yeah.
right? To evolve into this, you've always been this robust, stately, cavalier woman, but to ascend into this space. Talk to our and I say our because they are our revolutionaries about making radical choices
Right.
to move away from spaces to be a greater version of yourself?
I think I kind of got forced into that space because I probably should have left a year earlier. I probably should have left at the end of 2016. Quiet as is kept. But there were a lot of shut up. There were
Glad you did.
keep it quiet. Anyway, no, but so what's your
It's the whisper song.
but anyway, so um what was it like? So like I said, I got pushed into it. Things were, financially not the greatest, and I was just frustrated. I was frustrated because I knew the talent that I had. While I love New Orleans has a tendency to be extremely insular. And if you offend the wrong folks, it can make your professional life very hard.
Right.
And I knew, I have a whole lot of very varied training in a lot of varied things, but I knew it's crazy. It started out, I worked on a campaign, I worked on a mayoral campaign, we lost. And I was trying to find work and I couldn't find any. And I knew folks know I'm good at what I do and I couldn't find any. And I was, looking, a little background, my family is from the East Coast. So it's not like there was some measure of safety because I went to school in Baltimore. I had folks in Baltimore, but I didn't know. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to find this job. And there were a lot of no's. There were a lot of, we see the potential, but no. And a position came open. And I told y'all I'm out before I knew definitively that I had the position. So I got the position, and
What was that position?
I came to Baltimore I started out as communications manager for a nonprofit here in Baltimore called Family League of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. It is some of the most rewarding work I ever did in my life. When I left there a year and a half or so ago, I was the communications director. I worked for another good bruh by the name of Damon Millard.
Right.
And did you say brew?
I said Rue.
Well, yeah. And so I came to that position. But what the kind of radical part of that story is, I didn't have a place to live when I moved to Baltimore. I didn't have a plan really. I knew I had a job. I knew I was going to get paid eventually. But I think I took the train. I feel like I got on a train and I came to Baltimore. The first day or the first week, I wasn't calling people for a place to stay until like 3 or 4 days out. So like I got here that first part of August. And like 2 days beforehand, I called my very good friend Shaquilla. I almost called her by her maiden name, Shaquilla Purnell Saunders. And I said, hey, I got the job. I'm on my way. And she's like, oh, well, that works out well because we're going away for the week for whatever holiday it was, or, just to get away for a week. So you can crash on our sofa for a week. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, and also I'm very prideful. So it didn't have to be this hard. I didn't want to ask anybody for help. It was kind of like, what does it look like you going and doing this and not having a plan in advance? It looks crazy, right?
But remember, we ask for help. We find our midwives. So just as an interjection in the story, we find our midwives here, Rachel. We find our midwives.
I find my midwife. That's going to be in my head for the rest of my life. And so, the next step was my very good friend, Patrice Sanders, and her husband, Monty Sanders, who was also a guest on the show. One of
our first guests. That's
had a fabulous home. And she had always told me, she was like, whatever you need. And she means that. And so I lived in her basement for a month.
Wow.
I lived in her basement for a month. I drove Shaquilla's husband's car for a month back and forth. I Airbnb'd, and then finally ended up staying with a really good childhood friend of mine for probably like 3 months or so until I got my home. And so that whole process was really crazy. I was 40, 45, 46-ish.
Wow.
47, 48, something like that.
Now?
Huh?
You
Yeah,
53,
you
you born?
wish. You wish. But to be like, I had a lot of things to be at the age that I was. I always, lead with this. I don't have a degree. I just have 32 odd years of being good at what I do
Right. Being
and
resilient.
not saying no and not giving up. But like all like not having good credit, not having no money, like all of that. And it was a very tense time. But my sister, hey April, always tells me, has been telling me something ever since I was 22. And she always used to say, if God will bring you to it, God will bring you through it.
Mm.
And I would find myself, and it's very apropos that we're having this conversation because everything old is new again. I won't even go into the reality, but you find yourself sometimes resetting and having to be
Yes.
put in that position to relive those lessons. And that's what got me through. And,
Yeah.
had a fabulous run with Family League of Baltimore. COVID hit and the world flew apart. And,
Yes. Yes.
I had the privilege of working with, actually, I worked with two mayoral administrations on something that's called the Joint Information Center, which was like a cadre of public information officers from around the city that we were the first ones to know anything about COVID. I knew about it because my daughter was in school on the West Coast, came home from Mardi Gras, went back, and they sent her home the next week, and that was February. And she told me that, and I was like, "This is real."
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
so,
yeah.
did all of that, but like things kind of changed. And I hear a lot of people that tell their COVID stories, and like people quit their jobs, they open businesses. I think for me, I did my 3 years with Family League. I still have a very awesome relationship with them, but I feel like my work there was done and it was time for
Yeah.
me to kind of go on to the next level. And I have a fairy godmother of my profession who has like led me to every step along the way, bumped into her, and out of nowhere came this fabulous opportunity to work with the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland
Mm.
African American History and Culture.
Do your homework. Google Reginald F. Lewis. Right. Like this brother
Google
was. Yeah.
him, the museum,
Right.
and it's so crazy because I kind of felt like this had always been what I said I want to do. It was interesting. I actually looked back at a post that I made 5 years ago, and I, I no, maybe about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But I said by 2025, I want to be in a senior leadership role, directing external relations for a major nonprofit.
There you go.
And that's what I do. And it's like I said, it's kind of weird because when I told people, anybody that has like kind of followed my trajectory and the work that I've done is like, oh my God, Rachel, that's the perfect thing for you. Like this is perfect. This is perfect. And so I realized, yeah, this is the perfect space for me to be. We are a history museum, but we also highlight some of the most amazing art in the city, but we're also a cultural space. I have the benefit of working for an amazing executive director, Terry Lee Freeman. She believes that spaces like this should be the public square,
Yes.
very similar to the work that you and I used to do,
Yes.
where community can come and have really uncomfortable conversations to get to solutions to those uncomfortable
Mm.
realities. And so
Hmm.
that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Revolutionaries. There's a lot to pull out in this, but the nugget is that one. Here's the nugget that I think that um, our forever producer is saying is that sometimes you just have to jump and
Yep.
think about that. Revolution is radical. Oftentimes you jump, and as she said, faith and the universe, God, whatever you believe in, right? If this is your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
if this is your calling, if this is your direction, there will be a parachute. There will be something that will pick you up and carry you.
And it's interesting because even if, this is not, anybody who knows me knows this is not the first time I've done something like this.
Mm.
Um, but even if you make that move, as long as you're making it um, based upon what you believe to be divine or non-selfish direction, even if it turns out to be a mistake, there's always a way to bat
Mm.
you into the right direction.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. And we talk about this. Your midwives will find you,
Hmm.
or you will go find them. And then all of
Hmm.
a sudden there's this community of folks that are
Yep.
going to push you, because revolutions don't happen in silos. Revolutions don't happen just as a singular thing. You
Right.
don't bootstrap a revolution.
Nah.
No. You find is that as you jump in your revolution, that the people will come. Because if you are genuine and loving and caring and giving and on fire, as our sister Rachel has said at the beginning of this show, right? People gravitate to fire.
They do.
Yeah, people will gravitate to fire.
They
And
do.
so that's what happens. So revolutionaries, I want you to know, as you're thinking about this journey, as you're thinking about jumping, as you're thinking about what is my revolution, and then saying, what do I have to do to fulfill? Where do I need to jump off in my life? Right? Think about this, right? No plan. Sometimes the plan isn't there. Sometimes the best laid plans, right, are not the plans at all.
Absolutely.
Right. It's so interesting, Rachel, because people ask me, how did I get into venture? How did I get into entrepreneurship? Like, you were a professor. And I love to give this analogy around, like, the baby who finds itself. Remember the baby, the cartoon where the baby finds himself in the construction site,
Yes. And
and
he
all of a
missed it,
sudden,
and all the things are missing him. He doesn't get killed or
right,
squashed
right,
or anything.
all of the different things, and every time the baby's about to fall off, the next beam comes.
Yes, that part, right.
Yeah, in 2015, I decided to jump from this wonderful job as academia, where I had created a platform, writing.
Hmm.
I was speaking about hypermasculinity, and I jumped to create a a venture that was a consulting firm,
Hmm.
right? Talking about Black men, right? This is
Hmm.
always, my revolution has always been about uplifting Black men, right? So creating policy, putting people in seats that were going to help Black boys be successful. And then all of a sudden 2018 came, and I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I'm tired, literally tired of trying to get white folks to create policy or do the things. I'm tired. I'm ready to jump. Here comes Camelback Ventures.
Hmm. Yep.
And all of a sudden, this watershed organization, this watershed leader gives me an opportunity to jump and radically transform who I am as a person,
Hmm.
radically transform the work that I do, allows me to then build wealth, right? To then mentor and work with entrepreneurs. What
Hmm.
I'm saying, and I think our sister Rachel is saying, is that when you jump, right, and you find your passion, right, if you look at this sister right now, because I remember those days when we were both stressed, like, what the heck? What is going on? Like, what are we doing? Like, literally, what are we doing? Like,
Hmm.
Rachel would come in, I was like, oh, Rachel, like, I think we had a number system, like, what's your number today? I'm at a 1. I'm at a 1. Ooh, this ain't gonna be. Ooh, okay, I got this. You're good. You're good. But look at it. Look at us now,
Yeah.
as we sit in these seats,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting in a seat as an ecosystem builder here in my hometown, and this is something new. This is the next revolution, right?
Right.
The show has grown from us sitting in a booth, right, with jazz behind the wheels of steels, and jazz, whispering in every now and then, and you telling me, hey, my monologue is too long.
Like,
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, cut it. And remember to say at 15 after, you're listening to you're listening
yes.
to the
Oh my
Revolution show on
God.
WBOK 1230. My guest is, like she would point.
I had,
We
remember the paper? I would write it and put it
Yes,
up on the. Hmm.
yes. We had so much fun, and
Yeah.
look at us now. Look, I must comment, because now we are on YouTube, so folks will be able to get to see the Michelle Obama-esque outfit that you have on. You know what I'm saying?
I got this from Shein. Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. The Michelle Obama with look with the dangling
This
earrings.
is from a street vendor in New Orleans. Y'all
That's
can all
it.
get
You
her.
know what I'm saying? And she's got the Oprah Winfrey glasses on.
Warby Parker.
Yeah, exactly. And the Julian Malvo haircut. So
Okay, I received that.
yeah,
I couldn't carry Juliana Malvo's bathwater
yeah.
because
But
she's the bomb. But
yeah,
I
she is.
received it. I
Yeah, but I want you to take all of this crown that
I will,
we are giving you,
absolutely.
and all that you have done for this show and for me. Like, when I
Oh.
think about, like, as an only child, like, having people who I call
Mhm.
sisters and
Mhm.
brothers, right?
Yeah.
And Rachel is my sister. You know, Rachel is my sister, and we call each other. We haven't talked, and we haven't seen each other, and we actually haven't like embraced in a long time to give
You
each other
haven't.
love and joy and to
Mhm.
celebrate who we are. And so I remember saying, "Hey, like, would you come and do the show?" And she's like, "What you want me to come and do the show?" I was like, "Because we needed to do this,
Yeah, we did.
and our revolutionaries needed to hear how we got here and why
Absolutely.
we got here and what you've done over the years,
Yeah.
not only in front of the scenes but behind the scenes to get this show where it is, because literally this started in a coffee shop, me saying I want to be on radio and you saying we're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity. Um, I thank you for not trying to kill me in that coffee shop. Because there were some days when we were sitting there like, I wanted purple. I wanted more purple. No, no. It started out, I want it to be blue and green.
That's right. That's right. Those colors are still the same. Those colors. That's look. My social media team, my folks. We have a brand book now.
Have fun.
You know, you,
I like the
we
purple better.
look. We have no. I'm talking
Oh,
about
the
social
colors are
media.
the same.
The colors are the same. The colors are the
Okay,
same.
good. As long as they not that that green and blue.
No. The colors are still the same colors
Good,
that you and I came up with
good.
7 years. Look, when we put the website up
Yeah,
in 2015, they are still the same colors,
good.
that storm gray and white and
And that
purple.
purple.
Yep,
And that
and that
purple.
purple. And so look, my team has a brand book, and they come with. I was like, that's not that. Look, that's not the color.
That's not the color.
That's not the color. Here's the exact code
Here's the
of the color.
code.
Look, here's the code of the color. Right?
Yeah.
Where'd you get this? That is Rachel Graham. Right. That is Rachel Graham. So,
Well, thank
um, I want to let me go here real quick because
you.
I want to ask you. We've been asking all of our guests this,
Okay.
to pick a number, Rachel,
Mm-hmm.
1 to 5,
3.
3. As we talk about the 5 tenets of fulfilling your revolution, the third one is find your midwife. So, who's helping you fulfill your revolution right now in your life?
That is ooh, I can't believe you asked me that question.
Mm, mm,
Um
wow.
I'm gonna have to give an honest answer and we'll talk
Okay.
about it later. Um so it's very interesting. Here in Baltimore, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had been really struggling. And I was like, I need some oxytocin in my life. Not oxycontin, oxytocin. And that is when sisters come together and there is a
That's how you get oxytocin.
it is when sisters come together and there is a hormonal reaction where it buoys you. It is actually a real thing. And so
Oh, I know it's a real thing, but usually it's not when the sisters come together. But
oxytocin is when the sisters come together.
yeah,
It's a anyway.
yeah, we'll talk about that
We'll
later.
talk about that later. Anyway, but I invited 8 and only 2 showed up. And it was okay because other people had other obligations. And I have to give them my shout outs. One of them is a sister by the name of Dr. Stephanie Hall. And I laugh, it's an inside joke with that. But she is a dope sister who is in government and legislative affairs with Coppin State University. She used to be the executive director for the Maryland Legislative Black Caucus. We happened to meet because the museum was doing something with the caucus, hit it off. She is a New Orleanian, go figure. She's a good sister of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Ooh.
And so she was one, and then the other was Shaquila. Pernell Saunders, and we got together. And what came out of that, you talk about find your midwives. Sometimes you'll find your midwives in spaces of other people who need midwives.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so
Yes.
it was sitting there and listening to them. Like I was upset because my house is a mess. And they were like, girl, my house is a mess too. And so, but those are the two, like Shaquila calls me like every 3 days now to check on me to make sure I'm
Nice.
okay. Stephanie is always sending me some crazy text with some mess. But the other one, and we have to give credit where credit is due and leave it where it is James Singleton. Were it not for him, you and I would not have ever met.
Yeah,
And
that's
very
right.
good
Got to give a
friend,
shout out to my good brother,
very good
my
friend,
dear brother and friend James Singleton.
very good friend who, from time to time will chat, how you doing, and will get me right when I'm like, I can't, or I'm not. Um, But those are my midwives, and it was necessary to find those midwives because I lost my mother. Like that was
Right.
the craziest, like, to really feel untethered. And so yeah, those are my midwives.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I love that, and thinking about that, like who are the people who are going to move you to be
Yeah.
motivation, to be, like you said, to move you to be a rudder, to be a
Hmm.
buoy.
Hmm.
Think about that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just don't need to go. You just need to be buoyed,
Just to
right?
sit and be
Just to
still.
sit,
Yeah.
right? Because you've been fluttering, right? You've
Hmm.
been treading, and
Hmm.
you need someone to buoy you up. I remember
Hmm.
writing a blog, like, where are all the kayaks? I don't know if you remember
I
that.
remember that.
Where I almost drowned. I almost drowned running my favorite sport, running triathlons, and yeah, 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 cuckoo. But had to be buoyed, but would not. But the person would not allow me to get in the kayak. He was like, "Look, just buoy yourself, catch your breath, and move on."
Hmm.
Right. And sometimes that's what has to happen in our
Right.
lives, is that we just need to be buoyed so we can move down the road.
Right.
And oftentimes and the interesting thing, and here comes Dr. Corprew, right? Oxytocin is the bonding hormone, right? It is the bonding hormone, and typically the oxytocin is expressed during
Way too much. You getting into all that?
yeah. So, but yes, I mean, we also get that from hugs from our family. I mean, it is a
Hmm.
bonding hormone, and
Hmm.
so men and women
Yeah.
need
Right.
that feeling of, actually, it's a feeling of safety. It's a
Right.
feeling of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what happens when our body can release not only oxytocin but endorphins and
Yep.
dopamine that
Hmm.
allow us to relax and find joy.
That's what
And that is a
happens in a
wonderful thing.
hug.
Yeah, that is what happens. Like, to see the brain light up when you're hugged by someone that you trust
Oh
and
wow.
adore,
Okay.
and not just a regular hug, Rachel, like an
Okay.
endearing hug, when we see each other, that
Absolutely.
hug and embrace, like, I'm with my people,
Absolutely.
right? And,
Absolutely.
and that's the thing. And I think for Black men, as you listen to the show, and the people that love them, hug on us,
Absolutely.
love on us, right? Because what happens, as we know, we go out into the world with our armor on,
Hmm.
right? All the times, all the times, with all the things. And when we can strip off that armor and embrace each other, right? Think about what it does to our psyche, to our mental health, particularly if we have been drowning.
That armor is heavy.
Mm,
That armor, like like I said, you asked me, what was it like to do the show, and I said easy. It's because I felt like it was a way to, in my own little, woman world, to play a role in men having a safe space to take off the armor and just be.
yeah, yeah,
In some cases, it was conversations where, like, nah, man, get out of here. We ain't doing that. But maybe down the line, they get so irritated by what was said that they would go somewhere and reflect and finally
yeah,
feel find a space where they could take off that armor, because that armor is heavy. And when trying to tread water and take care of everybody else, it's just a lot. It's a lot.
yeah, yeah. It is a lot, and I think I am hopeful that this show gives strategy to the people that loves us,
Hmm.
as well as allow brothers to hear stories that are indicative of them and resonate with them,
Hmm.
that allow them to take off their armor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I hope everybody can say a big thank you to Rachel Graham, because if you've
Mhm.
stripped off your armor by listening to this show, it was because of Rachel Graham,
I
right?
really am tempted to put some humor in there. Not
Yeah.
like a naked man. No, I'm just playing.
You know what I'm saying? Hey,
But
yeah.
no, but
Yeah.
again, thank you for even allowing me to hang out with you and to be a part of it, and not, like I said, not killing me in that Starbucks, and being open, and sometimes less Torian.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but thank you. Like this is brave stuff that you've done, and that you've continued to do it. And you've had your own things that you've gone through, and
Oh,
yet you
yeah.
still keep pushing. And I mean, you're doing a service.
We try. We try.
All right.
Just call me. Just call me when you need service. And on that note, we will be getting out of here. We will be getting out. Revolutionaries, you know that we love you and that we are here for you, and that as you move through this space, as you are finding, and what I've been told is one of the most difficult questions of your life, that you are finding the answer, because it is thought provoking. It does make you think about how you're going to radically transform your life. And like I said, it's not what I'm doing tomorrow. It's not what I'm doing next week. It is, what is the revolutionary action that I need to take to be the better version of myself, to get to this best version of myself. And that's what this show is. Hopefully that you find something, some morsel, some tidbit, something that moves you along the way. And we are here. I want to give a shout out to my team, to Seiko, my engineer who makes this go, Sarah, my admin, my new social media person, Speedy, and just to say thank you for the forever producer of this show, the Rachel D, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
D
Yes.
Graham. I never knew what the D was for, but we'll forget
It's
it.
just Denise.
Denise. I was gonna say Dolores.
Oh no. Although my father wanted to name me Ethel.
Ethel. Wow.
Wow.
Revolutionaries, do your thing, and we will talk to you soon. I love you. I love you. I love you.